Released in 2009, the original Borderlands invented the looter shooter with its unique blend of first-person shooting, RPG elements, and a cel-shaded art style that I think was a perfect choice for this type of game in my opinion, as I feel it really is timeless. I'm massively biased here as I was obsessed with this game as a young nubile boy. Gearbox Software released Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced Edition in 2019, a remastered version aimed at bringing the beloved classic to modern platforms. I'm just going to be saying Borderlands or Borderlands 1 throughout this, as honestly nothing has changed except a slight graphical rework and a few quality of life features that I will mention. And also, Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced Edition is a fucking mouthful. Borderland is set on the lawless planet of Pandora, a barren wasteland filled with bandits, dangerous wildlife, and hidden loot. You play one of four Vault Hunters: Roland, Lilith, Mordecai, and Brick, each with unique skills and playstyles, each as legendary as the next. Except Roland, I can take or leave Roland. The story revolves around the search for the mythical vault, said to hold untold riches and an advanced alien technology. There it is. That's all you need to know. While the story is a straightforward shoot 'em up, it's the theme, world building, loot, and quirky characters that elevate the experience and set it apart from other shooters. NPCs like Marcus, the sleazy salesman, Claptrap before they ruined him, and Dr. Z, Borderlands' very own Dr. Zoidberg, inject humour and personality into Pandora's chaotic setting. However, the original Borderlands often drew criticism at the time for its sparse storytelling and lack of narrative depth, but it didn't affect my score as I knew what to expect as I've completed this game 8 or 9 times by now. And for me, I don't think I could name many first-person shooters with good stories off the top of my head. The gameplay loop that made the original so addictive at the time is shoot enemies, collect loot, level up, and repeat. This is the definitive looter shooter to me. Not because it's the best looter shooter, but because I would literally use this game to define a looter shooter to someone. It's a satisfying enough cycle. The procedurally generated weapons are fairly lackluster compared to the newer games, but there's still enough here to have fun with. The selection is fairly limited as well once you realise there is only a few different guns with randomised attachments. The gunplay feels solid except a few niche cases like the rocket shotguns and iridium weapons, with each weapon class, pistols, shotguns, sniper rifles and rocket launchers offering distinct handling and effectiveness. The inclusion of elemental damage, fire, corrosion, shock, and explosion is a nice touch, as well as without it, I don't think this game would have anywhere near the staying power it did at the time if these weren't included. I'd like to touch on the cars as well, because while they feel pretty terrible to drive, they're too squishy and they don't do enough damage even if the enemies are lower level than you. I'm very glad they did include them, because even imagining having to run through some of these areas without them is a nightmare. I imagine we have Halo's Warthog to thank for that. Borderlands thrives as a co-op experience. The game sports up to 4-player online, making it ideal for teaming up with friends. I find 2 players is the best in my experience. Any more and everything gets a bit bullet spongy, but for whatever reason there is no split screen co-op on PC, so for that you can go and fuck yourself, Gearbox. Also, I have no one to play with. Moving on. The most noticeable addition is a mini-map in the top right corner, replacing the compass from the original. This simple change makes navigation better, but I can't say I was ever too bothered by the compass. Sorting through loot has been streamlined with better UI, design and functionality, reducing the frustration of micromanaging items. The Enhanced Edition introduces the Golden Key system, allowing players to unlock high-tier loot using shift codes, a feature originally from the second game. So that's most of the quality of life improvements in this version. The visuals and performance got upgraded as well. 4K resolution and HDR support, improved textures, improved lighting and shadows. The Enhanced Edition preserves the original sound design, which strikes a fine balance between adrenaline-pumping action and atmospheric immersion. The soundtrack, composed by Jesper Kyd and others, perfectly complements the game's tones, ranging from ominous ambient tracks to high-energy battle themes, even if some of them overstay their welcome. Voice acting remains a standout with memorable performances that capture the wild and wacky personalities of Pandora's inhabitants. One noticeable improvement in the Enhanced Edition is the re-recorded and remastered audio for certain characters and dialogues. These tweaks enhance clarity and add subtle layers of polish, but I did find the voice lines were a bit quiet, so I had to crank the volume up on the dialogue. The game's early missions in Firestone are awesome. I think the early part of the game, all the way up until you beat Sledge, is my favourite section. The difficulty ramps up significantly in later stages. Some of the DLC bosses are a bit of a gear check, and if you get unlucky with your loot, it can be a kick in the balls. However, some encounters, particularly the final boss, the Destroyer, can feel anticlimactic due to their simple mechanics. The Enhanced Edition includes all 4 DLCs from the original game: Zombie Island of Dr. Ned, Mad Moxie's Underdome, the Secret Armory of General Knox, and Claptrap's new Robot Revolution. Each DLC adds shitloads of content and more loot to chase, extending the game's lifespan and providing some fairly fun and varied stories. The expansions are the best content here in my opinion, and that is consistent through the entire series. Well, they're the best stuff here besides Mad Moxie's Underdome, that while introducing Moxie, who is one of my favourite characters, is really fucking lame, and I'm not sure how it was received when it was added to the game. Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced Edition. Yeah, it's still a mouthful. Succeeds in revitalizing a classic title for modern audiences, letting people see where all the looting and shooting began. The graphical upgrades, quality of life improvements, and inclusion of all the DLCs make it a good way to experience the original Borderlands. While the game's age occasionally shows in its quest design and scaling, its addictive gameplay loop, unique setting, and art style remain as engaging as ever. For newcomers, I wouldn't say you need to start with Borderlands 1, but if you don't, I'd say you're missing out on the true vibe of Pandora. For returning fans, it's a nostalgic journey with enough to make revisiting Pandora worthwhile. Whether you're hunting for the loot solo or teaming up with friends for a chaotic co-op adventures, Borderlands Game of the Year Enhanced provides the original vault hunting experience. Pros, it is the looter shooter. There was nothing to compare this to at the time. I'm sure someone in the comments will say, what about Hellgate London? No one gives a fuck about Hellgate London. It's got addictive loot-based gameplay. The weapon damage numbers are low enough to be coherent and feel the impact of the upgrades, and it's a nice bonus that green and blue weapons can still be good even towards the end of the story. It's got iconic characters and humour. There's a reason they carried almost every important NPC over to the next games. The art style, I mean, look at it. I love this shit. You get all the DLCs, and some quality of life features if you give a shit about that stuff. The cons, the story is weak and completely ignorable. You get the gist of what's going on with visual cues though. Got limited character depth. Difficulty scaling is out the window after the first playthrough, with everything becoming a bullet sponge if you're playing solo. Also, there's a memory leak, so after playing for a few hours your game starts to run like shit. And this isn't isolated to just me, lots of people have this issue, and for a game like this, it's pretty unacceptable. Not enough loot. I'm going to say this about most loot-based games that I review, but if there is loot in the game, I want it raining and fucking pouring, not some bullshit little trickle for the first 20 to 30 hours. The enemy variety is lackluster. There's no indication of armor for corrosive weapons, so I just never used them. I feel like the AI is too accurate as well. You can just peek your head around a corner and every shot from a hail of bullets will strike you squarely in the face. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 due to the game defining the genre, and it should count itself lucky that it's such a solid game because it's showing its age even in the Enhanced Edition. Gearbox's iconic first game in the series is worth your time, but unless you have a friend to play with, I would suggest just doing the campaign and the DLCs minus Moxie's Underdome, and don't waste your time on New Game Plus or Playthrough 2 as they call it. Borderlands 1 remains a standout title in the looter shooter genre. Whether you're a veteran or a curious newcomer with Borderlands 4 around the corner, there's no better time to dive into the chaos of Pandora.